Not everyone is flocking to Canada. If you only look at what usually appears in the news, where the population is growing at a suffocating pace, where housing has become a scarce luxury, or where megacities like Toronto and Vancouver are becoming increasingly expensive, overcrowded, and noisy, then you might easily believe that this entire country is moving in a single direction, that everything is booming, expanding, and attracting resources from around the world like a giant magnet. But if you stop for a moment, if you are patient enough to piece these fragments together instead of looking at them in isolation, a different story begins to emerge. A story that is slower, less noisy, but carries a weight that is impossible to ignore. Because parallel to that glamorous development, there exists another Canada, one that never makes the headlines, one that fails to capture the media's attention, but is changing in the exact opposite direction. These are cities that have lost their ability to attract people, places where the youth are leaving faster than the government can replace them, places where the population is not growing, but is silently vanishing over time. This picture begins to reveal itself with a ruthless honesty once we strip away the fog of rhetoric. It is no longer a few isolated exceptions, but a systemic pattern of decline repeating with a terrifying regularity across the map. Consider this reality. Between 2011 and 2016, more than 20% of Canadian municipalities officially recorded a population decline. If we include places where the pulse of growth is merely a dying gasp of stagnation, the numbers are enough to make anyone shudder. The truth is, the prosperity of this nation is not being shared. Instead, it is being siphoned from the periphery to fuel the over-bloated expansion of a few select megacities. Growth hasn't disappeared. It has simply performed a massive migration, condensing all wealth and human capital into Toronto, Vancouver, or Montreal, creating frantic real estate fevers at one end, while in the rest of the country, cities that were once the pride of industry are left behind like losers in a game where they no longer have any cards left to play. And once this cycle begins, it is fueled by a chain of small but catastrophic fractures known as the doom loop. It doesn't collapse with a big bang. It starts when a few factories close, leading the youth to quietly pack their bags for brighter lights. As they leave, they take with them the tax base and the lifeblood of the community, forcing the government to cut services and close schools. This decay becomes a trap that pushes even more people to abandon their hometowns, turning decline into a self-sustaining engine that crushes the last hopes of a revival. Thunder Bay is not a city that fell. It is a city that simply stopped. If you walk its streets today, you won't see the jagged ruins of a war zone, but rather the eerie, polished stillness of a museum. For over 20 years, the population has remained trapped in a frozen equilibrium, but beneath that surface stability lies a demographic time bomb. With a median age drifting far beyond the national average, Thunder Bay is witnessing a brain drain so profound it has become a quiet crisis. As the brightest minds take their degrees and immediately board planes for Toronto or Vancouver, leaving behind an infrastructure built for a future that never arrived. The silence here isn't peaceful. It's the sound of a community holding its breath, waiting for a revival that feels further away with every passing year. It is a gray zone where the clocks are ticking, yet the hands never move forward toward a viable future. What remains is a beautiful, quiet rest stop for the elderly, a place where the vital energy required to innovate has been siphoned away, leaving Thunder Bay as a hauntingly well-preserved monument to a time when being just okay was enough to survive. In St. John, New Brunswick, the struggle isn't against a sudden disaster, but against a half-century-old shadow. This is one of the few places in Canada where the population peak isn't a future projection. It's a memory from the 1970s. For 50 years, this city has been bleeding its youth, creating a culture where making it is synonymous with getting out. Statistical data on continuous net population loss is proof of an economy unable to reinvent its appeal, where even as the heavy industry at the port hums with activity, the heart of the city feels hollowed out. It is a place where departure is no longer a difficult choice, but a grim rite of passage handed down from father to son, leaving behind a skyline of beautiful, historic brickwork that guards an Ngai Kong empty interior. The historic, colorful houses with peeling paint stand as a testament to a once vibrant industrial hub now losing its connection to the modern world. Every graduation season serves as a bittersweet farewell, as the city exports its most precious resource, its youth, to the economic magnates of the West, leaving the historic downtown to settle into a quiet, dignified decay. Sault Ste. Marie is a haunting monument to the danger of the one industry town. For a century, the pulse of this city was the orange glow of the Algoma steel furnaces. But when global competition and automation began to replace human muscle with algorithms, the heartbeat of the community faltered. The city didn't just lose jobs, it lost its identity. Today, the population sits nearly 10% lower than its golden era. And as the industrial giants that once fed every family on the block begin to shrink, they leave behind a landscape of silent smokestacks. The data isn't just numbers, it is the disappearance of young families and the emptiness of once vibrant neighborhoods, where when the only giant feeding the community sneezes, the entire social system falls into a chronic illness with no cure among the industrial ruins. The resulting trauma has caused the city to shrink inward as workers find themselves overqualified for the past and under-equipped for the future. It stands as a stark lesson. Money can build massive steel mills, but it cannot always sustain the complex social fabric of a city once the furnace goes cold. The danger in North Bay doesn't lie in a sudden, headline-grabbing catastrophe, but rather in an eerie, decades-long stability that feels more like a slow-motion retreat. For over 30 years, the population has hovered around the 50,000 mark, a figure that suggests a peaceful town, but in the brutal reality of modern economics, standing still is merely a silent surrender to oblivion. The youth here aren't being forced out by famine. They are being seduced by the gravitational pull of the southern megacities. They see a world where the internet is faster and career ladders are taller, providing a sense of belonging that a stagnant town cannot offer. When these young minds leave, they don't just take their physical presence, they take the tax base, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the genetic code of the city's future. North Bay has become a gray zone, a place where infrastructure is maintained, but the vital energy to innovate has been siphoned away. It is a beautiful, quiet rest stop for the elderly, where the clocks are ticking, but the hands never move forward. The city is a hauntingly well-preserved monument to a time when stability was mistaken for success. while the world raced past it toward a digital future. Perched precariously on the rugged edge of the Pacific, Prince Rupert is a haunting paradox. A city blessed with world-class natural beauty that cannot feed its people in the 21st century. Historically, this was a bastion of the fishing and canning industries, a place where the bounty of the sea provided a comfortable existence. But as the industrial fishing era withered, the geographic isolation that once provided sanctuary became a structural prison. Despite its strategic importance as a deep-water port, the population has plummeted from 16,000 to a hollowed-out 12,000. Today, Prince Rupert feels like a breathtaking island of history, slowly losing its signal in the roar of the modern global economy. The massive infrastructure of the port hums with containers that are rarely destined for local shops, creating a pass-through economy where wealth sails past the windows of residents who struggle for work. It is a stunning, rain-drenched landscape where nature's grandeur stands in painful contrast to the rusting remains of a cannery culture. The soul of the city is eroded by the loss of generations, turning Prince Rupert into a beautiful but lonely outpost, separated from the future by vast distances and a changing economic tide. When the Brunswick mine finally stopped its massive machines, Bathurst lost its fundamental reason for being overnight. For decades, the mine provided the high-octane fuel for the local economy, creating a bubble of prosperity that felt invincible. But mining is an extractive process with a finite end, and when that end arrived, Bathurst was left standing in a post-industrial void with no plan B. The resulting trauma has caused the city to shrink inward to survive, leaving a landscape defined by vacant storefronts, abandoned homes, and a median age that climbs higher with every census. The only thing truly growing here is the silence. The young generation, seeing the boarded-up windows of their parents' dreams, have performed a mass exodus toward the south. This leaves behind a demographic funnel where a shrinking workforce must support an aging population on a diminishing tax base. Bathurst has become a living reminder of the resource curse, a community that gave everything to the earth, only to find that when the earth stopped giving back, the people had no choice but to start leaving. It is a quiet gallery of what used to be, where the echoes of the mine are the only things left to haunt the empty streets. In the remote Côte Nord region, Baie-Comeau stands as a somber testament to the cold cruelty of technological progress. This is a city defined by titans, massive aluminum smelters, and colossal hydroelectric dams. Yet, in a bitter irony, these billion-dollar projects no longer require the sweat of 1,000 men. They require the silent oversight of sophisticated algorithms. The industrial might that built Baie-Comeau has effectively outgrown its need for the very people who settled the land. As the population bleeds away toward Quebec City, those left behind find themselves in an existential crisis. They live in a world that needs the power they produce, but no longer needs their presence to produce it. The city feels like an industrial orphan, a place where infrastructure is built for thousands, but inhabited by hundreds. The grand scale of the surrounding wilderness only emphasizes the isolation of the remaining families. It is a society where the legacy of hard labor has been replaced by digital efficiency, leaving a proud workforce to wonder if they are the last generation to call this rugged outpost home. Baie-Comeau is a testament to over-reliance on natural resources in a world shifting to a knowledge economy, leaving workers redundant amidst blocks of concrete and silent water. Kitimat is a city built on boardroom promises, a company town whose fate fluctuates wildly with global commodity prices. Born from a mid-century vision of a planned industrial utopia, Kitimat was supposed to be the model for northern living. However, despite billion-dollar LNG projects, the soul of the city remains fragile. The money flowing through the pipes rarely trickles down into a sense of permanent community. Instead, it creates a gold rush atmosphere where everything is transient. The demographic reality is one of high turnover, characterized by temporary housing and rotating shifts. When markets dip, the mirage of prosperity evaporates, leaving a community of families in constant anxiety. Young people are taught that their hometown is a place to work, not to live, viewing their stay as a temporary sacrifice rather than a lifelong commitment. Corporate capital can build a world-class terminal, but it cannot manufacture the intangible sense of belonging that turns a house into a home. Kitimat remains a collection of soulless worker housing, a lesson in modern economics where billion-dollar investments do not always equal sustainable life, leaving a town that struggles to plant roots in soil essentially owned by international shareholders. Chatham, Kent, is a cruel paradox. It sits directly on Highway 401, the wealthiest transportation artery in North America. Yet prosperity races past its exits at 120 kilometers per hour. For thousands of commuters, it is nothing more than a blur of green fields and gas stations, a place to refuel, but never to stay. While the rest of Ontario explodes in population, Chatham, Kent remains trapped in a negative growth spiral. The mechanization of corporate farming has turned lush fields into human deserts, requiring almost no human labor to maintain. As farm jobs vanished, so did the reason for the next generation to stay. Today, over 25% of the population is over 65, and the young are fleeing at the fastest rate in the region. Chatham, Kent has become a somber rest stop in the middle of a race, watching the world pass by every day without looking back. It is a buffer zone of isolation where the world is close enough to see, but far enough to ignore. The region is slowly being swallowed by the silence of the very fields that once gave it life, as it transforms into a place where people only pass through on their way to a future located somewhere else. We reach the end of our journey at the fog-bound cliffs of Cape Breton, the tragic destination of the doom loop. Here, the demographic funnel is completely flipped. School hallways are silent while the demand for palliative care reaches a breaking point. Cape Breton no longer exports coal or steel, it exports its own children. Every graduation is a bittersweet farewell as the island's most precious resource, its youth, packs bags for the West, often never to return. When a land loses its youth, it loses the ability to dream or reinvent itself. Cape Breton is transforming into a living museum, a collection of world-class vistas and Celtic melodies that mask a profound terminal loneliness. The infrastructure of the past looms large over a present that can no longer afford to maintain it. It is the final warning sign for the nation. A land without young people is a land without a tomorrow. Cape Breton is not dying with a scream. It is fading like a distant echo, a glory that has finally, quietly, vanished into the gray embrace of the sea. The lights are being turned off one by one, and the silence is starting to settle in as the island loses its capacity to regenerate its soul. A city does not die with a sudden scream. It does not vanish in a single moment of catastrophic explosion. Instead, it fades away in the small, quiet fractures of everyday life, a slow, rhythmic receding of the tide that most people fail to notice until the shore is empty. It vanishes when a light in a local shop window goes dark and stays dark for a decade. It vanishes when the laughter in a school playground is replaced by the rustle of uncut weeds and the creaking of rusted swings. This is a gradual vanishing, a quiet evaporation of spirit that feels like a breath caught in the freezing Canadian winter, thinning and thinning until it finally merges with the silence. The official maps and the digital GPS will tell you that these places still exist. Their names remain on the road signs, and their coordinates are still fixed on the grid. But the real question we must face is not whether the physical structures remain, but how much soul is left within the walls of these concrete blocks. As the megacities of the South grow taller, noisier, and more crowded, we are witnessing a nation being pulled apart by its own success, where the prosperity of the center is built upon the silent depletion of the edges. Canada is growing, yes, at a pace that world leaders admire. But in the long shadows of that greatness, the lights are being turned off one by one. In the quiet corners of our nation, the future has stopped being a dream and has started becoming a memory. We are left with a collection of beautiful facades and empty streets, watching as the bone and marrow of our country, the small towns and industrial hubs, slowly, peacefully, and tragically dissolve into the gray embrace of the past.